Hi, everybody. So we're going to start our third and final discussion here, which will last until 4:55. The focus here is on improving and further promoting transparency in the 12866 meetings process, as well as any additional feedback, questions, or ideas folks may have. For those of you that are just joining us for this section, a few notes at the top. So we're talking about 12866 meetings. These are meetings that take place with OIRA while between members of the public and OIRA, as well as the regulatory agency regarding regulations that are currently under review here at OIRA. Anyone can request 12866 meeting. They're listening sessions that are generally scheduled for 30 minutes. Really critical to remember that these are not, I repeat, not a substitute for sharing input directly with the agency during the public comment period. A note that's worth keeping in mind that the majority of rules reviewed by OIRA do not have 12866 meetings. And then even majority of those that do have 12866 meetings have very few. So it is a small number of rules that generate the vast majority of 12866 meetings. And then another important reminder that this listening session, meaning not the 12866 meetings, but rather the listening session that's happening right now, is being recorded and will be made available. So please just keep that in mind when providing your comments. So while the focus of this section is on transparency, of course, if folks have comments about any other part of the guidance, well, I guess actually this one has any additional feedback, questions, or ideas anyway. So please do feel free to provide that. So I think we'll now go to Madhavan, and my apologies if I did not pronounce that correctly.
Yeah, it looks good actually. I was just wondering, I come from United Nations background, and in these communities, you have a lot of this virtual meetings during the pandemic years. And I was just wondering, we can have a lot of this AV sessions, audiovisual sessions, because too many people who come with faces and participate have really good engagements. And this is one of my takeaways, and this is a giveaway to the community. Thank you. And really good sessions. Cheers.
Oh, thanks so much. Appreciate the thoughts on the session. I think also, just to repeat something that I'd said previously, we are, and that Administrator Rivez had mentioned as well, we will be releasing guidance to agencies, because I took part of this question to be that listening sessions are helpful. Are there opportunities to do further ones? And so there is guidance that will be going to agencies around public participation, reflecting a series of prior listening sessions we had, as well as feedback on draft recommendations. And as part of that, I think it's fair to anticipate, and certainly something we heard from a lot of folks, is providing a variety of means for individuals to participate is really useful, as well as meeting people where they are, and taking into account a range of issues that can make it more challenging for individuals to participate, whether that be the time, the location, language access issues, and the like. So all of those are really important things for agencies to think through when they're doing public participation.
Totally appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you. We really appreciate that. Kevin, I see your hand up. Is this some additional comments, or is this a legacy hand? I see Stephen, please.
Yes, well, I was waiting to see if anybody else wanted to say something who hadn't spoken before, but appears we've reached that point. Anyway, yes, I was going to suggest that I was just on a webinar, for your information, yesterday, where someone from OMB, and I won't get into it, but it had to do with racial designations, having to do with revisiting and lists and so forth about how OMB can give guidance on racial designation. Anyway, the title of the webinar of which OMB was a co-participant. They did not host it, but they were a participant, was stakeholder engagement and evidence-based decision-making. And so I'm going, well, but a lot of these people were data people. They weren't stakeholder engagement people, but they, like many other, throughout government, are understanding that stakeholder engagement, public participation, citizen engagement, whatever you want to call it, is very important to people. And they're all coming at it from all different directions. And I'm hoping that there can be, and I would like to suggest something so that different offices in OMB don't come up with their own flavor of stakeholder engagement, and that also it doesn't happen throughout all the agencies, because it's been my experience as someone who worked at 5 different federal agencies, and a lot of that because it was environmental work, the public was involved in those decision-making project proposals and so forth, that perhaps the working group on open government through the National Action Plan could be a place where some basic standard procedures for public participation could be had and be used, so that, like I said, there's not 27 different flavors of stakeholder engagement, because the average person is not going to keep up with, oh, well, how is the game played in this venue? How is it played over here? How is it played over there? So forth and so on. So, and I would point out that there is a public email listserv that is hosted at open.usa.gov. And that's where the National Action Plan and the Open Government Group, which was started by President Obama on his first full day in office. So it's not a new thing, but it's the fifth revision of the National Action Plan. But I'm hoping that it'll get some traction and some recognition under the current circumstances. It seems to be a window of opportunity to take advantage of all those things and come up with some common federal-wide or even government-wide or nationwide standards and practices that and terminology being a key part, so that we can understand who's, things like stakeholders, which they were still grappling with in the webinar yesterday. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much, Stephen. And just for those who are not familiar, Stephen was referencing the National Action Plan. She said was started under President Obama. Is done every 2 years and has a series of commitments from agencies, from the administration, and specific from agencies around transparency, open government, and the like. The most recent plan was released, I guess now it was 5-ish months ago. And so, Stephen, I think an excellent point about ensuring some measure of consistency. And so one of the things that OMB is doing writ large is actually taking on that exact thing, which is providing kind of a guidance to agencies that has that sort of common language and approaches. So there is some measure of consistency, recognizing, of course, that one of the hallmarks of public participation is engaging folks where they are. So there's going to be some measure of difference, but I take your point, having kind of a playbook, if you will, that folks can refer back to. As part of that, there will be extensive public engagement that will be starting in the near future, and utilizing the National Action Plan process. The folks that are involved in that is a big part of that, given obviously the clear overlap between the themes and commitments reflected in the 5th National Action Plan and the folks that have been involved there. So it's a really excellent suggestion. I think you'll be seeing more on that front in the near future. Maybe we can go to James next.
Hi, James again. Sorry for dominating this session, but speaking of repeat players, just want an additional thought of information that OIRA could try to collect through its meetings. One thing I have seen in the past is participants submit scientific studies during the OIRA meeting process. And, the thing about scientific studies is they can vary widely in their quality and in and their genesis, where they come from. So one thing I would encourage OIRA to look at is where if somebody does bring a scientific study, basic disclosure requirements about the genesis of that study, who funded it, who had editorial control over it, so that they can evaluate its credibility and quality. There's been proposals for this sort of thing out there. I think David Michaels, when he was administrator of OSHA during the Obama administration, had a policy gesture in this direction. There's language on this in the Stop Corporate Capture Act, which is pending in the House right now. So I would encourage OIRA to look at that to help promote credibility and trust in any scientific documents that are submitted during the meeting process. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Thanks so much, James. Maybe we could go to Laura next, because I don't believe Laura's had a chance to share any comments yet.
Hi there. Thanks so much. Laura Kate Bender with the American Lung Association. And I'll say at the top, I'm joining just now. So I have a few points that are stretched throughout the questions that you've been asking this afternoon.
Please.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I've done it earlier.
Yeah, no, we'll share them all.
All right. Well, I'll say first, thank you so much for holding this and for the broader effort. We're really excited about it. We will do broader written comments, but a couple of points that initially came top of mind for the Lung Association. So one, on the question of engaging communities that don't traditionally engage in the process, I think when we're working with folks to urge them to engage in rulemakings, we usually have to start from scratch, explaining that, how 12866 meetings work, that they exist, what they are. One idea that we had, in addition to doing proactive outreach from OMB, is to incorporate some of that information into the agency, even into the agency proposals themselves, maybe, or at least with what the agencies are putting out about how to engage in the rulemaking. Like, here's how to comment to EPA, and then later, here's how to, do a meeting with OIRA on the same topic.
Mm-hmm.
One other thought, and this is mostly on the second question, but obviously I appreciate that OIRA is trying to balance expediency and engagement, and obviously we want more groups engaged, and that means more meetings. Our big caution was that while we totally understand not wanting the same group with the same ask to meet multiple times in a given review, we do. I can think of several examples where a national organizational person might have a very different perspective from their local counterpart who is bringing in other members of a community, for example. I know as we work to engage more folks in this process who haven't traditionally known about it or had access to it, certainly, like the Lung Association, and I imagine other groups, will put out the ask to our connections. And so I wouldn't want to see the push to consolidate meetings from similar or the same organizations end up excluding some of, community contacts from a group like the Lung Association that would have a different, more local perspective than we would at the national level, if that makes sense.
That does. And we're just to that point. I think you had mentioned that you were drafting comments, and I think I may have mentioned this before you had a chance to join. But it would be very helpful to understand if there are criteria when we're considering consolidation that you all think would be particularly useful, that could be applied in a fair and equitable manner. And if there's criteria that you would have concerns about its application, it sounds like there might be some such criteria. That would be really useful for us to understand as well. So would greatly appreciate any thoughts that you, as well as any of the other folks on the call, could provide on that. But anyway, I didn't want to interrupt if you had additional questions or comments.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we can definitely do that. I think, for example, if you saw 2 requests come in from, and each of them had a group, and a member of each set of requesters was with the, there was one organization in common among them, for example, that might be 2 meetings with a very, very different perspective. So I wouldn't want that to be grounds to consolidate the meetings. A couple other things, obviously, this is expanding on the broader point above, but, even as I know, the workload increases with more groups and more outreach to more groups, we just urge you as a North Star to err on the side of inclusion. When there is doubt about whether to consolidate or deny a request, err on the side of denying when there's a gray area.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a couple of broader points, and we'll certainly flesh these out further in our written comments. But one, the more the process can be clear in advance about the timeline, the better. I think oftentimes, you request a meeting when you see that the opportunity is open, and then, it's good to be able to see who else is requesting and what the calendar is, but it's not clear how close the process is to wrapping up, or, at what point it is in the process. I know it's not always possible, but the more of a timeline at the beginning when groups sign up, I think the more transparent that would feel to folks. Certainly, similarly, again, we'll flesh this out further in our comments because it's a much bigger point, but the more information that groups have access to about, rules as they were going into the process versus coming out, the changes, the conversations that happened even after the fact would certainly help. And then finally, and I know we've made this point before, I think video in 12866 virtual meetings would be really helpful. One of the things that I think our volunteers and others that we work with find really good about testifying at agency virtual hearings as part of comment periods is that they can see the faces of the staff that are listening and they're really clearly paying attention. I think that visual is helpful for folks to feel like they've been heard. And so I'd encourage you to incorporate video. And that's it for now.
That's great. Laura, I think you said that you only just joined us, but I'm pretty sure that the comments you responded to like 4 or 5 things that we'd said previously and asked folks to share on. So thank you so much for that. Really hit a number of the open things we're looking to get comments on. So really appreciate that. Maybe we could go to Sean next.
Hi, thanks. Again, Sean Moulton from Project Government Oversight. Specifically around the issues you're asking for here, I had a few thoughts based on a previous review a few years ago about the information collected around 12866 meetings. One of the things I noted is one of the required pieces of information that get collected and published are the names of attendees from outside parties. And there's not really a commitment to enumerate and to name everyone from within the government, either OIRA or the responding agency or who have you, that are attending these meetings. And I think that would be useful to have a better understanding as you're doing these meetings, who's in which meetings, kind of thing. It's not critical, but I do think it would be one of those things that would provide a better perspective and a more complete perspective. The other thing was the wording again. Maybe it's being too picky about it, but I remember there being a wording about copies of materials that were used during the presentation, and not copies of materials that were shared or given to the government officials, to OIRA. And so it seemed to create a small loophole there for materials that weren't used in a presentation, but that were distributed. And so I think, again, clarification there that any materials shared during those meetings will be made public. I think those two would be helpful. Thanks.
You. Yeah, I see Jasmine coming off. Jasmine, just wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question, if you will. So what we tell desk officers to do, and often that, people come in late, come in early, is to introduce themselves as like, I'm Jasmine Sarah, I'm the desk officer for parts of DoD, and I'm going to turn this over to, and we try to do sort of a round robin across the room. Obviously, that's much easier in person than it is online, but is that not happening? Is that your perception of what's not happening?
I've only participated in a small number of these meetings. I can tell you that that generally does happen. It's more of what gets made public later, both for sort of record keeping, kind of who was in attendance there, but I guess a sense later as people are looking at who from. Usually, I think the greater interest is who from the agency are attending these meetings, because I think, as we had a bit of a discussion earlier, it's the agency that in a lot of ways is a kind of a bigger target for getting these points and concerns about a potential rulemaking to get them to hear it. But if there are people are attending who aren't seriously involved in the rulemaking process, who are there just to be sort of check a box, go there on behalf of the agency so they can say they attended the meeting and take some notes, you know, I think then there are concerns that, you know, you're not reaching the right people, and there might be criticisms of an agencies in terms of who they're having attend these meetings.
Okay, I'm just trying to think of what would be a more, I mean, obviously, we don't have any, we invite the agencies, but we don't necessarily
Right.
have a lot of control as to who they send.
Right, no.
Uh,
Sorry, Jasmine, can I just clarify? We do try to report all attendees on meetings to our reginfo.gov. So I think you said that there may be a perception we're only obligated to report the
Right.
public attendees, but we do try to report all attendees.
And I think, Michael, you're getting to it, that I think, you know, in any guidance going forward, maybe there should be some language in there that says that makes it clear that, you know, government officials, both from the agency and from OIRA, you know, will also be included in meeting participants. But right now, the last guidance I saw, and I didn't check just before this meeting, really focused, that transparency was really focused on the identities of the outside parties, which I think is the most important piece, but not the only piece.
Yeah, understood. I think we can take that back.
Appreciate it. And I think also just one other, but Jasmine, Michael, please correct me here, but I believe Sean, you might have also mentioned things that are handed to folks in person. Material that are handed in person would also be.
yes, we would, I mean,
handed.
in the before times, before the pandemic, if somebody brought something to a meeting and said, you know, we'd like to walk you through these slides, we would scan them and then attach them to, you know, have them attached to the information about the meeting. So, I mean, I want to distinguish between sort of notes that a participant may bring, you know, to kind of help him or herself just sort of walk through what the main points that they want to do besides, versus something they would provide to us to say, here are the slides we'd like to walk through.
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I was gonna say that's correct. So that anything we brought in person, we'd also try to make sure to capture either in the moment or ask the participant to upload later. But I think to your point, Sean, maybe it's a clarification of what our current practices are. Maybe, as you were saying, we're very focused on making sure, oh, what is happening on the other side. But I think your comment is clarifying what our current practice is now.
I think it is, yes, because I get that the way it's worded, again, the last time I saw it, it felt like it was more about the slides of the presentation. But if a stack of scientific reports were also submitted but not gone through, I worried that, you know, maybe they wouldn't be included because they weren't part of the presentation. And if that's not the case, I'm glad to hear it. That would be my expectation. Anything submitted during these meetings as a kind of official contribution would be part of it, but I just think you should clarify it in the language then.
No, I think that's fair. I think we've been very focused on sort of the outside piece, but we can certainly make that clear in the guidance.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, I think what we might do is just give, say, another 3 or so minutes to see if anyone else wants to raise a hand, and you're more than welcome to if we are not. Oh, I see Rachel. Yeah, please, Rachel.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're 2 for 2 now on this. This is great.
I wanted to add to my initial question. How do I know when rules are being put forward, and can I make recommendations when there are no rules being recommended? How does that work?
So let me try and answer that, Rachel. If I'm not getting quite at your question, please feel free to jump in again. So anytime there's a regulation that is at OIRA, you can request a meeting. So if you want to have a discussion about a regulation that is not under review by OIRA, you can, of course, reach out to the agency consistent with the practices that they have to have a conversation with them. But you wouldn't be able to have a conversation with us since it wouldn't be with us and we wouldn't have anything to hear from you about at that point. And then I think the other question is, how do you know when there's an opportunity to have a meeting? I think this was actually a question that a couple other folks have raised. And so one of the things that I think we're certainly taking back from this session is thinking through opportunities to make sure that you all are aware of when a regulation moves from the agency to OIRA, and thus you could request a 12866 meeting with us regarding that rule. So we heard a couple of suggestions, including using perhaps website functionality to provide automated updates, but other ideas put forward, and we'll certainly take that back, and would obviously appreciate any thoughts that folks want to provide to us now or in their comments later. And I see maybe we could go next to Madhavan.
Hi, so I was wondering, given the whole solicitation process actually, and the RFI process, there are a couple of social media organizations that keep changing their recommendation process or recommendation algorithm actually. Given some go in public domain, the algorithm process goes in public domain, but some keep that algorithmic or recommendation process as a non-transparent process. So do this particular community keep up with this recommendation thingy for information dissemination, or you request this social media organizations to give them the request this organization to put all this RFIs at a priority? Thank you.
Gotcha. And just trying to make sure, is this regarding the technical specifications for how information is made available, or the manner in which it's made available? I'm sorry, I just wasn't clear on which.
So basically the manner actually over how, because the algorithmic, algorithmic recommendation of social media platforms will be equally different from how we are spreading actually. So there's a mismatch over there, and we have to keep up with that, right? Even if we put our RFI, it may go on a very downscale. It's something like a rating, presidential ratings actually in elections. So we have to keep up with, how the media shows up actually. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So I think Mike Johnson has joined. Mike, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this particular question. Mike is from our team and more familiar with some of the technical aspects. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Mike, that you would add on this.
Not at this time. I think it's something that we should sideline for a discussion to get better detail on what we could do to kind of meet this need, but not at this time.
Okay, but thanks. So we appreciate the comment, and thanks, Mike, for that. Maybe we could go to Bitsy next, I think.
Thanks, Sam. Hi again, Bitsy Scary with Public Citizen. And my kind of question and comment is regarding just more transparency around perhaps meeting minutes or notes that were taken during the 12866 meeting. I think it could be helpful to have available for public view a rundown of how the meeting went, what was discussed, who spoke, who made which points, just to really promote that transparency. And also, I think it's helpful to disclose any parties who have conflicts of interest, having some sort of conflict of interest disclosure, as that's also really critical for transparency as well. And then I also echo the comments of my colleagues who spoke, who are from the American Lung Association, and then as well from James Goodwin. And I will leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. And then, Rachel, I think it looks like you may have another question or comment. Okay, well, we'll come back to Rachel in just a second, but that may have been a legacy hand. But Stephen, I think you raised your hand as well. Welcome. Any further comments from you?
Yes, as it seems that you're getting close to the end, I just wanted to make sure that you pointed people towards whether it's reginfo.gov or someplace so they can, of course, if you're going to post this video, is that right? Are you going, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay, along with and if you've been keeping the transcript, then that would certainly be helpful as another way, as inclusive of the video as well. That would be helpful, but mostly to be able to have an easy findable link. So for all the people who weren't here today, they can see what great things, what great feedback you all got, and also how you clarified what's going on. So that would be my main suggestion. I'd love to be able to tell people what you're up to, but so that they can find it in an easy way. That's basically my suggestion before you leave. So if you could tell, is there some place you can point us to now?
I was actually just going to ask my colleague Alex if we have a place we can point folks to at this point where it will be posted.
We do. So there is a webpage on the OIRA Modernizing Regulatory Review site that describes our goals around this process, links to the draft guidance and the opportunities for public comment, and links to the RSVP for this session. In addition, once this session concludes, we'll be posting the recording of this session to that website and send a note around to everyone who RSVP'd for this. So stay tuned for that once we're able to post, and you'll receive an email with the URL.
And is there also something for new people to get on the that email list?
Well, meaning folks that wish to be added. Yeah, we'd certainly, if folks are interested to reach out, and happy to add them onto the list. And also, of course, you should also, of course, feel free to share with anyone who wasn't able to join us today. And it'll also be on the link. And also welcome if if there are any thoughts on other places to share it. We do have a list of folks that we have sent these out because they previously asked to be kept up to date on things happening in the modernizing space, and so they would receive that update as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, of course. Madhavan, I think you may have your hand up again. I don't know if there's an additional question.
Hi. So for the previous process, I would like to help assist actually in the technology topic. Second is I would like to be added in the archive main list, which the gentleman just spoke about it. Thank you. And thanks for the community topic. Cheers.
Right. Yes. And so I think it is safe for everyone to assume that if you have RSVP'd for this event, we are assuming that you do want to be kept up to date on information. And certainly for those of you who have joined us for the full 2.5 to 3 hours at this point, we definitely know that you're interested. But even if you just joined us for 5 minutes, we still know that you're interested, and we'll plan to add you to the list of folks that receive updates so that you can keep up to date on that. Okay, so I think we may come to the end of questions at this point. So want to thank you all for putting in the time. As I mentioned, special thank you to those of you who joined us for the entire time to date. Really appreciate that. I know it's a real commitment that you all have a lot to do, but it is very helpful for us to hear about this, and it does inform how we develop this guidance. Hopefully you'll see that for those of you who participated in the process around the agency public participation guidance, you'll see your thoughts hopefully reflected in that guidance when it comes out. And again, we hope that you all see some of the really helpful feedback you provided here reflected in the final version. As I mentioned, we will be as Alex mentioned, excuse me, not me, but as Alex mentioned, we will be circulating the recording here. We will include in that a link to the public comment process so that you can submit a written comment. We very much appreciate everyone who provided verbal feedback here. We would encourage you to also provide written feedback where appropriate, particularly fleshing out ideas, pointing to specific parts of the guidance that you might want to make changes to, or specific parts of the guidance that you would want to see unchanged because you think they really hit the mark. That's all very helpful for us in thinking through finalization. So that, just to end with a big thank you to my fellow colleagues for giving their time and expertise to this. A big thank you to all of you for providing your time and expertise to us at OIRA. And we look forward to continued engagement in the future. Thanks so much, everybody.